Hello everybody, welcome to this video. Today we'll be discussing about chapter Heredity. Before that, let's discuss about some important points. So genetics, it is the branch of biology in which we deal about various aspects of genes. Genes means you know that it is the small portion of chromosome. We have already discussed about chromosome in previous chapter. So the unit of chromosome is called gene, and the branch of biology which deals about various aspects of genes like structure of gene, location of gene, function of gene. That branch of biology is known as genetics. And gene, as I told you before, it is the part of chromosome, and this is the main factor which transfer the parental characters from one generation to another generation. That is why gene is defined as a small portion of chromosome which is responsible to transfer parental characters from one generation to another generation. Now let us discuss about heredity characters. So the characters that we get from our parents. So that is why those characters which are transferred from parents to their offsprings is called heredity characters. So since it is obtained from parents, that is why they are also called parental characters like skin color, height, um, hair, color of hair, or shape of hair. These are some example of heredity characters. Now let us discuss about acquired characters. Those characters, since the topic is acquired, means obtained characters. So those characters which are gained from the environment or surrounding are called acquired characters. Or in another language, what you can say is those characters which we learn in our life. Those characters are called acquired characters. Example: swimming, singing, cycling, uh, driving. These all are example of acquired characters because these skills we have learned in our life. That is why those characters which are gained from environment or surrounding are called acquired character. On the basis of visibility, there are two types of characters. One is dominant and other is recessive character. So at a time, both characters are not visible. So that character which is visible are called dominant character. For example, if there is cross between tall and dwarf individuals, then the offspring will be either tall or dwarf. Both characters cannot be visible at the same time. So that character which are visible are called dominant character, and it is represented by initial capital letter of character. For example, between tall and dwarf, if we assume tall as a dominant character, then how do we represent is initial capital letter of character means the tall initial letter is T, so we represent by initial capital letter means capital TT. Now recessive character means, as I told you before, when you cross two individuals with tall and dwarf character, then the offspring will be either tall or dwarf. Both characters are not visible at the same time. So if we assume tall as a dominant character, then the another character dwarfness will be hidden. So those characters which remains hidden are called recessive characters, and such characters are represented by initial small letter of dominant character. For example, between tall and dwarf, we have already considered tall as a dominant character. So recessive character is represented by small initial letter of dominant character. So between tall and dwarf, tall is dominant character. So initial is small letter. Initial capital letter is dominant character, and initial small letter of dominant character is represented by recessive character. That's why dwarf is represented by small dt. Now let us discuss about Mendel's experiment. This experiment was conducted by a scientist known as Gregor John Mendel. He was from Austria, and since he conducted the experiment based on heredity at first, that's why he is also known as father of genetics, and he is the first scientist to study how the characters are transferred from one to another generation. So he is the first scientist to study on inheritance of hereditary characters from parents to their offsprings. For that, he did experiment on pea plant. Scientific name of pea plant is Pisum sativum, grown on his garden. So why selected pea plant for his experiment? So it can be asked in exam. Write any two region or write any three region. Why Mendel selected pea plant for his experiments? So these are the answers. So Mendel selected pea plant due to following reasons. So pea plants have bisexual flowers. So bisexual flower means both male and female organs are present in the same flower. And because of this, when doing the experiment, we can do self-pollination as well as cross-pollination. So both self-pollination and cross-pollination we can do according to our wish. That is why pea plant was selected by Mendel. Similarly, the life cycle of pea plant is very short. So due to that, we can get result in short period of time. That is why to conduct experiment will be very easy. So this is one of the biggest hurdle in the case of human. Mendel's law we cannot study in human because human has long life cycle. But in the case of pea plant has life cycle of just 2 to 3 months only. So we can get result fast. So that is why Mendel selected pea plant for his experiment. And you can find large number of contrasting characters in pea plant. So that is why he selected pea plant. Like example, you can find pea plant with tall and dwarf character. You can find pea plant with red and white flowers, and so on. So we can find large number of contrasting characters in pea plant. That is why he selected pea plant for his experiment. And the last reason is this plant is very easy to handle. It means to say we don't have to provide any special care. So that is why Mendel selected pea plant for his experiment. So during his experiment, he studied seven pair of contrasting characters. So what are they? So this question can be asked in exam. What are the characters studied by Mendel? So please you mention this table with seven pair of contrasting characters he studied. So here he studied in pea plant about height of plant. So what he did is he made the cross between tall pea plant and dwarf pea plant. Similarly, he conducted experiment with the pea plant having round seed with the pea plant having wrinkled seed. Similarly, he crossed the pea plant with yellow color seed and green color seed. Similarly, he made a cross between pea plant with brown colored flower and pea plant with white colored pea plant. Similarly, he made a cross between pea plant with in flat pod of the pea with the constricted uh, pod of pea. Here started inflated and restricted is like this. Inflated means flat and restricted means having constriction. So he made a cross. Similarly, he made a cross between pea plant having pod of green color with the pea plant having pod color yellow. Similarly, he made a cross between position of flower means he made a cross between pea plant having axial flower with the pea plant having terminal flower. So he did experiment based on these seven different characters and found the same conclusion. And those conclusions he mentioned in these three laws, and these laws are called Mendel's law. So one by one we'll discuss. The first law is called law of dominance. Second law is called law of segregation or law of purity of gametes. And the third law is called law of independent assortment. But according to curriculum of class 10, the third law will not be learning here. So first two law we are going to discuss now. So law of dominance, as I told you before, when we made a cross between a pair of contrasting character like tall and dwarf, then the offspring will be either tall or dwarf. It means to say both characters are not possible to possible to be visible at once. So when there is a cross between a pair of contrasting characters, what happens? Only one of them is visible, whereas other remains hidden. Similarly, we have second law, that is law of segregation. It is also called law of purity of gametes. So you know that in hybrid you will have a recessive character as well as a dominant character, and the recessive character which is hidden in hybrid, it will not remain hidden all the time. What happens is it will get separated and then becomes visible. So when it gets separated is during the formation of gametes. So that is why the statement of law of segregation is the recessive character present in hybrid gets separated during the formation of gametes. So here is the example. So Mendel, he took pure tall pea plant and pure dwarf pea plant, and he made a cross with the gamete. So he found the hybrid, and this is hybrid having both gene, like the gene representing tall character and the gene representing dwarf character. But as law of dominance states, both characters are not possible to be visible at the same time. So here the tall character is visible, whereas dwarf character is hidden, which is called recessive character. So when it is further continued to get the second generation, then the recessive character, that is dwarf character, which is present in this hybrid, will get separate. You can see here also it is separated, here also it is separated during the formation of gametes. And because of that, that character which was hidden in the first generation, this is reappeared in the second generation. So this is the example which explain law of dominance and law of segregation. So here if you see the pure tall is 1, hybrid tall you'll find 2, and pure dwarf you'll find 1. And these two are having similar type of gene, so that's why this is called homozygous tall and this is homozygous dwarf, and this has got uh, gene of both tall and dwarf character, that's why it is called heterozygous tall. So the phenotype ratio, phenotype is physically 3 are tall and 1 is dwarf, so that's why the ratio of phenotype is 3 is to 1. So this is another example that was conducted by P. So Mendel conducted experiment where he crossed the pure plant with yellow seed with pea plant having green seed. So when they are crossed in first generation, you cannot find the both character. So here the yellow character is visible, whereas green character is hidden. So if you cross again, then what will happen at the end? The green character which was hidden in the first generation, it will again reappear. So you can see the ratio out of 4, 3 are yellow and 1 is green. So phenotype ratio is 3 is to 1. The conclusion is in first generation, how you got the offspring is by the self-pollination, means it was done the self-pollination within the same plant, and you got the hybrid tall pea plant. In second generation, sorry, it was just opposite. It is written here mistake. So in first generation, how do you get the first generation? By cross pollination, because you are crossing the two different characters. So it is cross pollination. You get first generation by cross pollination, whereas the second generation, how do you get? By the self. Between them only we cross and got the F2 generation. That's a question may come. In Mendel's experiment, how do you get first generation? Then your answer is by the cross pollination, because different plants are crossed. But how do you get F2 generation, second generation? By the self pollination, because here the same offsprings are crossed. That's why it is the second generation is obtained by self pollination. So if you look at the ratio, then phenotype ratio is 3 to 1, because here what happens is out of 4, 3 are yellow and 1 is green, so phenotype ratio is 3 to 1. And if you go percentage wise, then out of 4, 3 are yellow, means 75% yellow, and 1 is green, 25 is green, so that's the ratio wise is 75% is to 25%. Genotype ratio means genetic expression. So out of four, one is pure tall. You can see in first example, see here, one is pure tall, two are hybrid tall, and last is again pure tall. So that's why genotype ratio is 1 is to 2 is to 1. So in all experiment, no matter which characters you do, if you are crossing a pair of contrasting characters, then the phenotype ratio and genotype ratio, they are always same, no matter which characters you have crossed. Phenotype ratio is always 3 is to 1, and genotype ratio is always 1 is to 2 is to 1. And even third generation also we can obtain. And how do we get third generation is by the self pollination. So let me tell you once again. First generation we obtain by cross pollination, second generation we obtain by self pollination, and third generation also we can obtain by self pollination, and we obtain the third generation. So in third generation, what happens? From the pure tall pea plants, you will get only tall pea plants, and from the hybrid tall pea plants, as in second generation, you will get the same ratio, 3 is to 1, and from the pure dwarf pea plant, you will get the pure dwarf pea plants only. So this is another example. So here guinea pig, we can cross the guinea pig. This is pure black guinea pig, and this is pure white guinea pig. So when they are crossed, then in the first generation, what happens? You'll find only the black guinea pig. And since it is obtained by crossing of opposite character, so that's why they are all are hybrid. So that's why they are hybrid black. So if they are cross among themselves, then in the second generation, what happens is the character which was hidden in the first generation, the white character, it was hidden in the first generation, it will again reappear in the second generation. So if you look at phenotype ratio, then out of four, three are black and one is white. So phenotype ratio is 3 is to 1. Similarly, another example is done, that is Drosophila. It is a kind of flies. So this is the Drosophila with long wing, and this is the Drosophila with the short wing. So the long wing character is dominant, that's a capital LL, and short wing is recessive character. So when they are crossed in the first generation, since long wing is dominant character, so in the first generation you will find Drosophila with long wing. That means the short wing character is hidden here, but they are hybrid. Hybrid means they have the character of short wing, but it is hidden. So when they are again crossed, then you will find ultimately the character which was hidden in the first generation, it will again reappear in the second generation. See, out of four, three are having long wing and one is having short wing. So ratio is again three are long means three and one is short wing. So 3 is to 1. So result is everywhere same when you are crossing a pair of contrasting character. So based on these experiments, we got some terms. So let us be familiar with these terms. So monohybrid cross means if single pair of contrasting characters are studied during an experiment, then it is called monohybrid cross. Like before we have done, we have cross tall and dwarf. So tall and dwarf means this is one pair of contrasting character. So in place of one pair, if we study two pairs of contrasting character, then it is called dihybrid cross. If many characters are studied, then it is called polyhybrid cross. Now, phenotypic character means the character which are physically visible. It is visible physically, that is called phenotype character. Like example, your skin color, your height, and all. Genotypic character means those characters which are expressed through the gene, means they are not visible from outside, but in gene it is expressed. So means you have to check the gene. So that character which are expressed only in gene, that characters are called genotypic characters. Now, homozygous pair means it's a pair of gene and they which are having the same kind of character. Like tall character you see here, so both genes are same. Such pair of chromosomes are called homozygous pair. But heterozygous pair, so hetero means different. So it's a pair of gene where the characters are different. So example, when you cross the tall and dwarf, so we found the hybrid. So hybrid was having different pair of characters. So such chromosomes are called heterozygous pair, where the gene or pair of gene with different characters. Hybrid, so those organisms which have such chromosome means heterozygous pair of gene are called hybrid. Heterozygous means mixture of gene. As dominant and recessive characters are found in plants and other animals, similarly it is also found in human. So it has been asked in essay examination. So remember this table. So you can also find dominant character and recessive character in human. So it has been asked, write dominant, two dominant character of human or two recessive character of human. So it has been asked. So do remember this table. It may be asked in your exam. So dominant character means the character which is visible, and recessive character means the character which is hidden. So the straight thumb. So if the thumb is straight, then that is called it is dominant character. But back turn thumb means this kind of thumb is back turn. So here see back turn. It doesn't. It is turning back. So this is he remain hidden in most of the cases. Okay, only in few cases you can see it, but most of the people they have straight thumb. It doesn't bend. So that's why since this kind of thumb is present in more population, so it is dominant character. So know his thicker thumb, and his thicker thumb means here. So if it is bent, then it is his thicker thumb, and if not bent, know his thicker thumb. So in many people you can see such thumb. So this is uh, dominant character. Know his thicker thumb. Another is rolling tongue and non-rolling tongue. So example, many people they can roll the tongue. So that's why it is dominant character. And non-rolling means they cannot roll the tongue. So it is recessive character. And dimple cheek and non-dimple cheek. So if you remember on the cheek, you can find a kind of depression. That is dimple cheek. So this is visible in many human. So it is dominant character. But non-dimple cheek you can see in only few of them. So that's why it is recessive character. Isolated ear lobule means your ear at the end of the ear you'll find one small piece of ear, it is hanging down, that is called ear lobule. So many people what you'll find it is separated, like in Buddha. If you see statue of Buddha, the Buddha has got long ear lobule. So that kind of ear lobule is called isolated. But in few of human they have joint ear lobule, that's why it is called recessive character. Now here also many people they have curly hair and only few of them have straight hair. So curly hair, since it is found in large population of human, so this is dominant character, and straight hair is recessive character. So it can be asked in exam, write two dominant character or write two recessive character. Please write these points. Now variation, the meaning of variation is differences. So if you look at the siblings only, then they are different to each other, though their parents are same. So that is all due to variation. So the main reason of variation is due to change in gene or maybe due to the environment. So that's why variation is a morphological. Morphological means outer appearance, or physiological change means inside the body we have so many processes going on. So if those things changes, then it causes variation. And what happens during the variation? There will be either genetic change or environmental change. Example, if you remain at equator region of the earth like Africa, then slowly your skin turns dark. Okay, so it means changes has occurred. So that is environmental reason. But genetic reason also can cause variation. Like example, you have gene in chromosome. So if any gene of the chromosome changes, that can cause variation. So according to the like example impact of the gene and environment, there are two types of variation: somatogenic variation and hereditary variation. So somatogenic variation is also known as environmental variation. So since it is called environmental variation, means this variation is caused due to the environment. And this variation is not transferred from one to another generation because it is caused due to the impact of environment. So it is acquired variation. It is obtained from the environment. So these variations, as I told you, it will not uh, be inherited from one to another generation. Like example, development of muscles in an athlete. So when athlete go for practice, then he or she develops muscles. So that is acquired because it is not obtained from the parents. Like loss of leg in an accident. So if a person will face an accident, then he or she will lose leg. So it is also changes. It is also variation, but that is caused due to the environment or surrounding. So such variation is called somatogenic or environmental variation, and these variations are not going to transfer from one to another generation. Now let's talk about another generation, variation, that is called blastogenic variation or hereditary variation. So here what happens, this variation, since it is heredity, so that means this variation is caused due to change in the germ cells. Germ cell means the one which from the gametes, and in the gametes the chromosomes are there, so there will be change in the gene. So hereditary variation occurs due to change in the gene, because already we have mentioned there are two cause of variation. One is genetic change or environmental reason. So hereditary variation occurs due to change in the gene. So that's why that arises due to change in the germ cells, and what happens, it will transfer from one to another generation. Like example, color of skin, hair, eyes, color of eye, etc. And another basis of classification of variation is either it is continuous, transfer from one to another, or it will not transfer. So based on that, there are two types of variation. One is continuous, and other is discontinuous variation. So since the topic is continuous, that means what? This variation will transfer from one to another generation. But this kind of variation occurs in small scale, so that's why people may not notice it. So the variation which can be transferred from one to another generation, since it is transferred from one to another generation, it is also called continuous variation. Like example is, you can see if like example, difference between very tall and very short person. Okay, so this variation go on transferring to another generation. Like if both parents are tall, then their children will also will be tall. If both parents are dwarf, then their children also will be dwarf. So this is continuous variation. Discontinuous variation means since the topic is discontinuous, so it will not transfer to another generation. So uh, that kind of variation is called discontinuous variation, which will not transfer to another generation. Like example, blood group. Blood group will not transfer to another generation. Like example, if the father is O positive and mother is B positive, then child can be any blood group. So blood group will not transfer. Similarly, fingerprint, like what fingerprints parents have, it won't be similar with their children. So these kind of characters are not transferred to another generation, and such variation is called discontinuous variation. Now let's go to mutation. So in some cases, what happens is you will see the sudden change. That kind of changes have not taken place in parents, and it will not be seen later in next generation. It will occur in certain generation where sudden change will occur. That kind of changes are called mutation. So that's why mutation is sudden change. It happens instantly. Okay, and it won't go to another generation. Means it will not uh, be inherited, or it has not been seen in previous generation, and it won't be seen in the next generation. It just occur in that particular generation, and that changes which occur suddenly, that is called mutation. Like example, six finger limb. So here you can see the person has six finger limbs. So this is seen suddenly. Like disability by birth. So if some babies takes birth by disability, then that is also the mutation, like special birthmark. Okay, so these are some example of mutation. And our biologist called Hugo de Vries is the person who first talked about this topic, mutation, in 1907 80. So the cause of mutation is like radioactive rays, like UV ray, X-ray, gamma ray. That means if a person is more exposed to such rays which are harmful, then what may happen is you can see the sudden change in his life, that is called mutation. And as I told you, it does not get inherited from one to another generation. And lastly, let's talk about difference between variation and mutation. So variation means it is morphological or physiological change in organism that we have seen. It is change in appearance or biological process that occurs in the body, whereas it is the sudden change that takes place in the organism. And this variation which is occurred, it will transfer. So most of the variation it will transfer. That's why it is continuous variation. But mutation it will not transfer to another generation. That's why it is discontinuous variation. And since it is transferred from one to another generation, so that's why it is seen in every generation. But mutation, it is not seen in every generation. It is seen suddenly in a particular generation. So it is not seen in every generation. But variation we can see in every generation. And variation is caused due to environment or due to change in the gene. Okay, but mutation it is occurred due to the radioactive rays and harmful chemicals. So with this,